Slime. It's come a long way since it first crawled its way across the screens of drive-ins as the Blob. But even since the mean, green, on-screen slimings of game show contestants and celebs on Nickelodeon, slime has grown, spread, and evolved. From Lovecraftian-type monsters to the special effects in Ghostbusters. From those weird little teardrop-shaped enemies from Dragon Quest to Silly Putty. It feels like slime has always been a part of our lives. There's gallons and gallons of green goop just all up in our pop culture. And now slime is a way for teens and tweens across America to relax, get Instagram famous, and make... That's a fake number, right? That's not real? Wow, I'm in the wrong business.
I don't know.
So how did slime make the transition from being an unctuous, man-eating horror movie ooze to a soothing, satisfying DIY fad? Attempting to trace slime back to its earliest pop culture origins is kind of an exercise in futility because it's as old as nature itself. All over the world, these things called slime molds form under seemingly spontaneous conditions. Seriously, like to this day, nobody knows why these single-celled organisms form or what they're made of. Some people blame their existence on equally slimy things like toads or, you know, aliens. A logical next step from toads, if you ask me. One type of these slime molds, star jelly, has been documented as far back as the 14th century. Its name coming from the commonly held belief that it forms during meteor showers, and it's pretty weird looking. In Veracruz, star jelly and other molds are known as caca de luna. And yes, that means exactly what you think it means moon poop. An 18th century naturalist, Thomas Pennant, described it as something that looked like it was vomited up by birds or animals, which is a set of creatures that also includes birds. But how does nature's snot connect to the goo that became a pop culture phenomenon? Well, one particular slime mold in Pennsylvania is single-handedly responsible for the eventual popularization of slime in America. It's a slow creep from moon poop to gack to the perfect crunchy glitter DIY slime. But the clear first step towards cultural relevance, French and Japanese folklore as well as Lovecraftian stories aside, is the inimitable 1958 creature feature, The Blob. Oddly enough, The Blob was inspired by a real slime mold that appeared in Philadelphia about 8 years before the movie's release. 4 policemen reported the discovery of a domed disc of quivering jelly. 6 feet in diameter, 1 foot thick in the center, and an inch or two near the edges. And the craziest part, when they tried to pick up the blob, it dissolved into an odorless, sticky scum. So naturally, the director of The Blob was intrigued. Soon enough, Steve McQueen was on drive-in screens everywhere, running away from the inevitable, unstoppable creep that was basically just a really big slime mold. The Blob's cinematic success and artistic novelty would inspire hordes of horror filmmakers like John Carpenter and David Cronenberg to include the goo in their films. And in the era of physical special effects, many horror movies incorporated slime of some kind. But it wasn't always the green, ectoplasmic-ish goo that we usually associate with Ghostbusters. During the golden age of practical effects from about the late 70s to the early 90s, before computerized special effects were readily available, revered effects specialists like Rick Baker or Rob Bottin would have to create fake blood and supernatural goop and other weird viscera in the same way that the Instagram slimers of today do, by mixing chemicals and household products and other dyes to make realistic-looking blood and gore out of, well, slime. Sometimes they'd even just make it for the noise it made, allowing for the sound mixers to cut it in during post. B-movies like The Blob and The Thing may have introduced the idea of sentient slime to moviegoers, but movie slime wasn't really a thing until the 1984 release of, say it with me now, Ghostbusters. In Ghostbusters, the slime itself played a large part in the narrative, instead of just being a part of the special effects or just the villain itself. In Ghostbusters, what's the main character's goal? To prove that ghosts exist and then trap them for scientific study. So then the movie asks, well, what are the signs that you have a ghost? And just like that, we get the scene of the library ghost, where the card catalog is covered and dripping with slime. And like a good 1-2 punch, it's immediately followed up by the appearance of the library ghost herself. And then an entire generation of children was traumatized forever. But then the audience knows, ectoplasmic goo equals ghosts. But not only is slime included in the mythology of ghosts and therefore incorporated into the entire Ghostbusters narrative, there's a whole separate sentient slime-based character that they all have to deal with. Which is Slimer, if you somehow still didn't know that.
disgusting blob.
In the screenplay, Slimer is very loosely described as incredibly foul-smelling amorphous vapor. And he left behind ectoplasm, or ectoplasmic residue, which was created by the crew using a recipe for methylcellulose ether, which is a powdered thickening agent used in drugs and food. But how did slime become the go-to substance for filmmakers looking to gross out their viewing audience? Well, it's likely tied to associative conditioning. And a common example of this is Pavlov's dog. Because Pavlov rang a bell each time you would give his dog something to eat, the dog would begin to salivate anytime he heard the bell. The dog associated food with the sound of the bell and then was conditioned to have a certain reaction whenever he heard the bell. Personal and societal experiences colors our feelings with a whole bunch of stuff. Critters like frogs and salamanders are slimy because their skin secretes this special protective ooze. But because some frogs and salamanders are poisonous, we may have been conditioned to fear or avoid these things, and by extension, slime. If we're constantly presented with slime in various horrifying circumstances, like in a river of ectoplasm or as a sentient man-eating blob, it's no wonder that we came to see it as revolting. But thanks to children's television, newer generations developed a fascination with slime. The 90s saw big-name celebrities as well as average Joes getting slimed on national TV. But believe it or not, the iconic green goo didn't actually originate on Nickelodeon. We trace the roots of the green slime to the Canadian show You Can't Do That on Television. Originally, the show was produced and aired on Ottawa's CTV station CJOH-TV. But by the early 80s, the newly found American kids television network Nickelodeon developed an interest in the show and ran test episodes that were marketed specifically to an American audience. By 1982, You Can't Do That on Television was the highest rated program on Nickelodeon. The revolutionary television show was originally planned as something like a Saturday Night Live for kids, only with tons of that green gooey slime that 80s and 90s kids love so much. And that is how Nickelodeon Slime was born. During the game show portion of the show, anytime a kid contestant would say, "I just don't know," a big bucket of slime would be dumped over their heads. And soon, slime became Nickelodeon's calling card. It was featured in various new game shows, including Double Dare, Figure It Out, Brain Surge, and, unsurprisingly, Slime Time Live. Celebrities get slimed every year at Nickelodeon's Kids' Choice Awards, and there was even a slime geyser at the former Nick Studios in Orlando. The first appearance of slime on the show was a happy, but really gross accident. In fact, the very first slime was a literal bucket of rotting garbage. And I'm not just saying that to be dramatic, it literally was garbage. 2 or 3 weeks before air, while the crew was shooting a dungeon scene, creator Jeffrey Darby asked to use cafeteria leftovers as sludge. The shooting of the scene was delayed a week or so, and so the bucket of slop started to develop a layer of bright green fuzzy mold. Because they were short on time to shoot, Darby just dumped the whole rancid bucket of slop on the kid anyway, which, to be fair, is not the worst thing a child actor has had to go through. Co-creator Roger Price was of course furious, but audience reception was so positive that Darby and Price eventually wrote an entire episode around the slime called The Green Slime Show. Darby said of the mixture, "It was described by a child as if you had walked underneath a cow while it lifted its tail." Thankfully, the show's slime recipe changed after that first appearance, becoming a much more innocuous mixture of green gelatin dessert powder, flour, and water. In fact, kids were so into the slime that the recipe was a closely guarded secret. Darby said,
"Other kids will get jealous of these kids. Slime became I want to be slimed. Maybe that was because you felt like you were part of this club of these very, sort of kids who were on television every day."
Slime captured the hearts and minds of an entire generation. Even though the gross out factor was still very high, there was something else at play here. As Darby said, getting slimed meant that you were part of something. And 90s kids were hit with a whole new sort of associative conditioning, because now, slime had a serious cool factor. Slime's new allure definitely played a major part in rehabbing its image. All of these innovative uses for slime, combined with the ineffable coolness of Ghostbusters and You Can't Do That on Television, caused it to blow up. Kenner, an insatiable company that had already destroyed its competition making Star Wars toys, then began to make Ghostbusters-themed action figures as well as mini Slimers that had goo inside of them. Now that the green gunk was on television sets everywhere, a bunch of other pre-existing slime-related products all suddenly became popular, like Silly Putty or the Slime Monster board game, or Mattel's Slime itself, which which was neon green and squishy and had a lot of similarities to current-day slime. It even came in an iconic green garbage can. Soon enough, slime was just a part of the average American household, if that household had children. Although I'm sure adults had it too, I mean, we're not really ones to judge. Slime today is more an Instagram trend or DIY science experiment rather than a feature of some brand or corporation. It's often designed to be aesthetically pleasing rather than disgusting, and it's used by teens and tweens as a way to relax, conceptually similar to something like a fidget spinner or a fidget cube. There are dozens of varieties, like glitter slime and fluffy slime and butter slime and iceberg slime and magnetic slime, and the list just goes on forever. The slime making trend started over the summer of 2016 when videos out of Thailand flooded Instagram. While the recipe had been floating around for years before, it struck a chord with a new generation of kids. The trend took off in the US, turning slime amateurs into slime entrepreneurs overnight. According to the New York Times, the hashtag slime appears in 3.5 million Instagram posts, and slime searches on Etsy have increased by 9,000% since October of 2017, according to the company. Top slimers, which are Etsy artisans with good product and a massive social media following, can make upwards of hundreds of thousands of dollars a month either selling slime individually or through sponsorships on their YouTube channels, and I gotta get in on this market, I think. The most renowned and prolific slimer in the scene is 23-year-old Karina Garcia, the self-proclaimed slime queen, whose videos have literal millions of hits and feature crazy challenges like 100 pounds of slime. Even an amateur slimer can make pretty good money though, and a lot of grade school kids do just that. It seems like a strange thing to trend, but with the overwhelming focus on STEM-based learning in America's classrooms, it actually makes a lot of sense. If you're a kid that's encouraged to do your experiments and be curious about the world around you, and you learn by doing rather than reading or hearing a lecture, then of course DIY projects like slime would be something to get into. Not to mention the somewhat troubling ubiquitousness of social media in kids' lives these days. If it's a fun science project you can do at home and it will get you likes on Instagram, well then hell yeah, it's gonna be a trend. But you don't have to take it from me. We invited our friend Helena to the studio to talk about the slime trend.
So yeah, what's your favorite part about making slime?
It's very you can make it so many different types and colors and consistencies, and you have so much fun. It's so satisfying, and adults like it too. So what's satisfying about it is the poking noises and just having fun making it, because it's a fun thing to do when you're bored.
Do kids play with it in class?
Most of the time you're not allowed to, but sometimes if you don't want to get in trouble, sneak it. That's what people do.
How do people sneak slime in?
Well, if you have a desk, you just open a container and then just start playing with it.
How did you learn about slime?
Well, it was going a lot around YouTube, and people started bringing it in during school to play with it at lunch and recess, and that's how they did that. So that's how.
What's really interesting about the slime trend is the importance of sound in most of the videos that are posted online. As I mentioned before, slime has long been used as a source for squelchy paranormal sounds. From horror movie soundtracks to patched in samples on EDM tracks, the sound of slime is so particular that many artists use it in their work. There was even a musical genre called slime punk that evolved in the 2010s from C-punk, but since the rise in popularity of autonomous sensory meridian response, or ASMR videos, the noise that a DIY slime makes can be more important than the physical appearance or the texture of the slime itself. For those who don't know, ASMR is a physical sensation that's characterized by a tingling up and down your spine that is specifically caused by a hyper-focused sound. There are thousands of ASMR videos on the internet of people opening pickle jars or tapping on wooden blocks, and now the new hotness is poking slime. These videos are supposed to be relaxing and transcendent for the viewer, but the way in which many of these are filmed are almost pornographic in their attention to detail and heightened audio. But none of this really answers the question of why slime? What is it about the glop that draws us to it as humans? Well, as Flickchart.com's Douglas Van Hollen claims, true slime is both an object and an attitude. Slime is both the idea of the grotesque and the unexplainable, and the tantalizing feeling of rebellion. The feeling that things can be unexpected as slime all the way. Slime is rebellion. Slime is bucking the ordinary. And slime is spreading wherever you please, literally pushing boundaries. And many slimers today are doing just that, creating wealth from glue and gunk. So this leaves us with one more question. What's next for slime? And we're gonna let Darby take it away on this one.
I think things only last like 2, maybe 3 generations. And this is on its second, it's a generation 2. You know, Nickelodeon keeps it alive on one show. And that's because it's a cheap joke. I think the next thing is something very different. I hope it is. In the same way as custard pies went away, slime needs to go away. Part of growing up is, you know, leaving your old toys behind and, you know, getting new toys or new experiences. Generations need to reject, at a point, the previous generations. That's evolution, and we need to do that.
I'm Jacob with ChannelFrederator, and thanks for watching our video about the history of slime. Don't forget to click that little bell icon to become part of our notification squad, and also make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss an upload from us in the future. And if you want to see more videos like this one, consider supporting our Patreon, where we post sneak peeks for new pilots, behind-the-scenes footage, extended creator interviews, and more. As always, remember, Frederator loves you.